he just went low. He's in his head. He's in his head. He's open. His head wide open. Cracked open in the face.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Mario Man 100 back again with another episode of How's My Team, and it's going to be a bigger episode this week because obviously the Premier League is back. So we've got to talk about Liverpool going up against Bournemouth. We got the Giants going up against the Gold Coast Suns in the second leg of the Expansion Cup. We've got the Titans doing the double header with the Sharks, both in the women's game and the men's game. And yeah, we even got to talk about Western Sydney Wanderers, which I almost completely forgot about as well. So very much an action-packed, a full video of How's My Team this week. So let's start with the first game, obviously, of the slate. So yeah, it's wearing my Liverpool jersey. I didn't actually mean to do this on purpose. Obviously, it's the only jersey I haven't worn in the last few weeks. I think actually since Diego Jota passed away, I think was the last time I actually wore this. But obviously the Premier League's back. It was back this week. We still have a few games still to go, obviously. Some of those will play tonight because I'm recording this on Sunday. But we got to talk about Liverpool. They played in the first game of the season against Bournemouth, and it looked like it was going to be a draw or possibly a loss for Liverpool, even though they were up 2-0 pretty early in the game. And then they won it at the death. They won it 4-2 over Bournemouth. So ended up, Bournemouth, I think, actually scored with like about 7 or 8 minutes left of regular time to tie it up at 2-2. And it was looking like I was up for some of the game, and I was because obviously they were playing a little bit after midnight on Saturday night, so I was up probably longer than I should have been. But then they won it in stoppage time. They won it in 4-2, and obviously it ends up putting us in fourth at the moment. Obviously, there's a few teams from 16th right through to 9th that haven't played yet, so we're looking at 8 teams at the moment. So Arsenal, Brentford, Chelsea, Crystal Palace, Everton, Leeds, Man United and Nottingham Forest haven't played yet, but we are in fourth at the moment. Obviously Man City are on top. Sunderland, who obviously got promoted into the Premier League this season, they're in second at the moment, tied with Spurs. And Liverpool, all those 4 teams in the top 4 have all got 3 points at the moment. It's just goal difference, obviously. Liverpool +2, Spurs and Sunderland at the moment with +3, and obviously Man City at the top with +4. But obviously, like I said, there's still a few games to play yet this week. So ultimately, those could change. Those positions could change. But we're in fourth at the moment as of Sunday. So yeah, 4-2 result, actually at home at Anfield, and it was a pretty emotional game. I think obviously the first Premier League game of the season, obviously the first one for the defending of their Premier League crown, obviously for Liverpool, and obviously after the passing of Diego Jota as well. Just not an ideal situation, but obviously playing at home. It's a huge game to start off the season with, and obviously coming away with a win was fantastic for Liverpool. So I won't actually be talking about Liverpool next week. We won't be talking about them until the week after, I believe, because They don't play until the 26th of August now. We're against Newcastle at St James Park, so we're actually away from home in the second game of the season. And then obviously we have a few more games, obviously in September. But I think we have 4 games, obviously in September, including 3 week to week. So I think we've got some international games. I think that's possibly why we've got so much of a break in between some of these games, is that we've got some international games, whether international friendlies or like qualifiers for the World Cup or anything of that nature. When it comes to like the international teams. So we have a situation where we've got a little bit of a break between games because we've got we've got 9 days my time between games right now from today to obviously the next game, which is at 5 a.m. on Tuesday for me. Ultimately, we won't be talking about Liverpool next week. We'll be talking about them probably the week after. But yeah, 4-2, not a bad result at all, and good way to start the season. And obviously, being in that Champions League spot at the moment in terms of that result. So we'll see what happens with Liverpool, but perfect start, obviously, to the campaign to defending our Premier League crown. So we'll talk about the big result probably at the end of the video because I want to rant about that, and obviously we'll talk about that. But we'll start with the Titans women's team. We'll talk about the men's team later. But we'll start with the women's team, and it was a loss again at Shark Park against the Sharks, 12 points to 8 for the Titans women's team. It's unfortunate because they did score first, and I was watching at least the start of the second half because it was 0-0 at half time. So the defences were pretty solid. Didn't let points in, obviously, for both teams, but I think there was a few errors from both teams as well in terms of possession. But obviously the Titans did score first, and then I think we only kicked a penalty goal because we actually converted that try, I think, as well. So we only got a penalty goal as the points after the try, but they got 2 quick tries in succession. Ultimately missed the conversion both times on those tries, the Sharks. I didn't even realise that we actually had it up level in terms of the score with 8-8 with about 12 minutes to play, and then they had kicked 2 penalty goals in the game as well to put it into 4 points. So not a bad result away from home for the Titans. Obviously we're running out of games to play and try and make a surge to finals, though the position is we haven't actually moved anywhere at the moment. Now, obviously, I think the Dragons have still got to play today, I believe, off the top of my head. They've still got to play today. So we could drop a position to 10th, but we're in 9th at the moment. We're staying in 9th for the present moment. Obviously, the Dogs are above us. They've got the Cowboys, and the Dragons have got the Tigers. So we could move from 9th down to 10th with results today pending, but at the moment we haven't actually dropped as of yet. We'll say that the Raiders did actually move off the bottom of the ladder because they ended up winning against the Warriors, who actually had 2 players actually sent off for bad fouls. One of them was obviously a dangerous tackle, which was using a leg lift, which didn't look great at all. The second one, it's probably, I would say, not as bad, but obviously the way that the tackle was enforced by obviously the defender that actually did get sent off, it did look like obviously they collapsed on the leg, which they're very much on the fact that they don't want to have tackles on the legs like it was. So the Raiders actually didn't score in the second half, from what I hear, but they ended up coming away with a win, the first win of the season. So that means the Tigers are on the bottom at the present moment. Obviously, the Tigers, yes, have still got to play the Dragons, but they haven't won yet. The Tigers, so the Tigers are on the bottom. Raiders are in second last, but the Titans obviously are in around that mix. Could drop from 9th to 10th. And obviously we've got some big games coming up in the next month, because obviously we've got the Dragons at home, and then we've got the Eels at home as well, before going away to Newcastle to play Newcastle, and then being at home against the Raiders as well. So we do have a shot, because obviously the Dragons are around our position. Obviously they will move up to, unless for and against goes against them or goes their way, they could jump. The Dragons could jump as high as 7th and push everybody down, depending on how. They could even jump to 6th, realistically, because of their for and against. Obviously, the Warriors have got -6 on their for and against, and the Dragons have -28 at the moment. So it depends on with the Tigers on how much they lose by, if they do lose, of where the Dragons' positioning will be. Because obviously, if the Dragons do win, they'll ultimately jump the Titans and the Bulldogs anyway, just due to the fact that the Bulldogs and the Titans obviously had that draw. So they have 5 points compared to the 6. And then obviously the Eels, for and against at the moment, is worse than the Dragons at the moment. But I think the Eels have still got to play the Roosters today as well, because I don't think the Roosters have played either. So they could be in a position where they've lost by more. But again, the Eels could beat them. Who knows at this point? But yeah, so we got obviously the Dragons are around that position. The Eels are around that position as well. Obviously, the biggest one is Newcastle, who are in 3rd at the moment. Obviously, they have the Roosters next week. So that's going to be interesting. That's going to be a top 4 clash. And then obviously Newcastle have also got to play the Broncos as well. So they've got to play like the top 2 teams coming up before obviously playing the Titans. And then obviously finishing off at home against the Raiders, who obviously are in a position lower than us at the moment. So it's going to be interesting. We do have a situation where we can win a few games to get on a roll to get into the top 6. Obviously, at this point in time, the Warriors are sitting in there at 6 points. We're only 1 point adrift of that right now. Obviously, if the Dragons do win, obviously it is only a point still. But we got to keep making wins now. And obviously, starting next week with the Dragons at home would be a great start. Now, obviously, that is the mid. I think actually that's the mid women's game on the Saturday, because it's 3:15. So that's right after the first men's game of the Saturday rounds for the men's just starts. So not a bad result, 12 points to 8. Obviously, it's another loss, yes, which sucks for the Titans women's team, but they're not actually playing too bad. I think that they're playing better than they have the first couple of weeks, the last few weeks, especially in that draw against the Bulldogs in Magic Round. But they've been playing a lot better. They've been in a lot of games since, and even, I guess, technically the first game, they technically were in it for a little bit before, obviously, the Cowboys run away with it. But they've been in a lot of games this year. Obviously, they got blown out by a heap when it comes to, obviously, the Broncos, and being sort of close to the Roosters for most of that game until, obviously, towards the end where they just got on a roll. But they've been competitive in some games, which I do appreciate. But especially against the Broncos and the Roosters, yeah, those two are outliers. But ultimately, I think again those two teams are like the teams to beat at the moment. Obviously, with the Roosters being in first and the Broncos being in second. So actually, I think At the moment, the Broncos are in first. Sorry, and the Roosters are in second. Obviously, the Broncos won yesterday. So yeah, it is a situation where quite a few things can still happen. Oh yes, because the Broncos beat the Eagles yesterday. Yeah, they played the second game after the Titans. But yeah, 12 points to 8 against Cronulla Sutherland Sharks. Not a bad loss, but could be a lot better. But the next month is very important if the Titans do want to play in finals, the Titans women. So yeah, we need a few wins on the trot. If we can win all the games that are coming up in the next month, like the next 4 weeks, that'd be great. The one against Newcastle, I expect is probably not going to be a win. It could be, but I doubt it at the moment, just the way that Newcastle are playing. But again, could be hard hitting for Newcastle because obviously they're going to play the Roosters and the Broncos leading into the Titans game. So it'll be interesting to see how they shape up and whether they'll have a bunch of energy. Obviously they'll be at home, so they might have a little bit of a leg up there. But we'll see what happens. And I guess we're kind of doing this in timeline order at the moment because obviously at the same time that the women's Titans team was playing, the Giants were playing. They were playing the first session of Super Saturday, the first game in the second leg of the Expansion Cup. And they come away with a win. It was a second win on the trot in a row. Against the Suns, and obviously since we beat North Melbourne last week, we won by 35 points in the Gold Coast. So it was 111 to 76, 17 goals, 9 to 11 goals, and 10 behinds for the Suns. So the Suns were a bit inaccurate again. That's 21 scoring shots, obviously, for 11 goals, which obviously is a positive. But we're looking at 28 scoring shots. I cannot count 26 scoring shots and 17 of those for the Giants being goals. So it's pretty good percentage there. There was a few rush behinds as well from both teams, but especially I've seen a few for the Giants. Obviously, with the Titans game as well, and like both Titans games as well, obviously was at work. So I didn't actually watch the majority of this game at all. Obviously was keeping up with it on my phone. It wasn't on Channel 7 as well because they were playing NFL preseason games. So I couldn't see any of the Giants. I was surprised because I would have thought that they would have played the Giants game in the middle of the day because apart from obviously horse racing, which sometimes they do put on Channel 7, I would have thought that they would have put some of that on. But I don't know. But it keeps us alive in finals because right now we're in 6th position. Obviously, we've got the Western Bulldogs still to play, but we'll probably be staying in 6th position as of right now because at the moment, I think the only teams in the top 8 that are still got to play, or the top 9, obviously, is Geelong and the Western Bulldogs at the moment. Obviously, Geelong played the Swans, so that's an interesting game for Geelong. Obviously, if they win, they jump Brisbane, because obviously Brisbane Lions won against Fremantle, so they jump into 2nd position, 2 points ahead of Geelong at the present moment. But if Geelong win, obviously they go to 64, they'll be in front of the Lions by 2 points by the end of it. We'll say that Geelong's draw has been quite a bit easier than Brisbane's. Obviously, Brisbane has still got another top 8 side to play. I think they've still got Hawthorn to play next week, so that's going to be interesting for Hawthorn as well. But the Western Bulldogs obviously got a very, very important game on their hands today. Obviously, they got to play Melbourne. I'm pretty sure they got to play Melbourne. So if they win against Melbourne, then they got to play Fremantle at home. So at this point in time, the Western Bulldogs will jump into the 8 if they do win today on percentage, because they'll jump the Suns. Obviously, the Suns lost, but the Suns still obviously have that game in hand as well against Essendon. So The Suns can still fight for a top 4 finish at this point in time, especially with Collingwood going down to the Adelaide Crows last night by 3 points, which was a cracker of a game. Watched like pretty much the last quarter of it, and it was hard hitting as it should be. There was barely any scores for pretty much the first half of that last quarter, and then the floodgates kind of opened towards the end with a couple of goals going either way, and yeah, quite a bit of possession going for Collingwood's way, especially at the start of that fourth quarter as well, and just not scoring. And I think the inside 50 count was almost double, if not more so, for the Collingwood Football Club than it was for the Adelaide Crows, and the defence for Adelaide was immense. So they haven't sewn up, obviously, the minor premiership right now. Obviously, Adelaide cannot be knocked off of second, so they have a home qualifying final no matter whether they finish first or second. They do have to play North Melbourne next week, so I'd imagine they would be resting some players, but obviously in terms of the result today also matters as well, because if Geelong don't win against the Swans, then Adelaide will have the minor premiership and they'll stay at the top of the table no matter what. So they might even rest more players at that point if push comes to shove and Geelong do lose today. I expect that they won't, especially with Brody Grundy being out for the Swans. But weirder things have happened in this season, and this season has been crazy. So wouldn't be surprised if the Swans somehow win, because they've won a few games on the trot even against Brisbane last week. So it's going to be interesting to see what the top 4 is going to look like, because if Geelong do win, then obviously it'll be Adelaide, Geelong, Brisbane, Collingwood. And Collingwood are only just in there by a percentage, and it's only half a percentage point at that, realistically. I think it's 0.4%. Over Hawthorn at the moment. Obviously, the Giants did get a little bit of boost in terms of percentage. It's 115.5 at the moment, which is still not ideal. It's still the second worst in the top 8 at present moment. Obviously, Fremantle especially losing and losing as heavily as they did, their percentage goes down to 108.6. So, in terms of if the Giants somehow lose to the Saints next week, and the Bulldogs win against Fremantle next week, Giants won't be the ones that drop out. It will be Fremantle at this point. Obviously, the Gold Coast Suns obviously still got that game in hand. They play against Port Adelaide in Adelaide, I think at the Adelaide Oval, for Ken Hinkley's last game as head coach for Port Adelaide. So it won't be the easiest game, obviously, for the Suns, but I expect that they're going to bounce back after this 35-point win, a 35-point loss for them against, obviously, the Giants. And then they've got Essendon, obviously, at home on the Wednesday after to finish off the regular season, obviously picking up that game from opening round, which obviously got delayed heavily just due to the fact, obviously, the Cyclones earlier this year. So, going to be interesting for them. Obviously, they have a shot of making the top 4 as well, but Collingwood have got to lose against Melbourne for them to do that at this point. But again, their percentage, they've got to win by a decent amount in both games, obviously. If Collingwood don't blow Melbourne out of the water in their game in the last round, then the Suns have a pretty good shot if they beat Port Adelaide and beat Essendon by a hell of a lot of points. Because obviously if they want a top 4 finish, they will have to just win and just keep winning and win by a hell of a lot in both games. Because their percentage is pretty good. It is behind Collingwood at the moment by 1.9%, I think. It's 121.2 to 123.1, so yeah, 1.9% at the moment, which is not unattainable at the moment, but that's at the moment. Obviously, Collingwood has still got to play one extra. They're going to play one game. Obviously, the Suns are still going to play 2, and they do have an extra game, obviously, to make up that percentage boost. But yeah, Fremantle are in the worst case scenario at the moment because they were in fourth at the end of last round, and they've slipped right down to seventh. But again, if they lose again, they drop right out of the eight. So it's a big slide in the last 2 weeks if they lose against the Western Bulldogs away from home. So it's a big game for both clubs. Obviously, the Western Bulldogs have still got to win today to make a percentage, but they've got the West Coast Eagles. And I think the West Coast Eagles are playing at home as well. So it'll be an Optus Stadium game, I'm pretty sure, for the Western Bulldogs. But it's very important that, obviously, for the Western Bulldogs to win today to keep their finals hopes alive, because if they don't, they're out. They're basically out at this point. Obviously, because the Suns have got an extra game in hand. They could still make it, obviously, the Western Bulldogs, but they would have to hope that the Gold Coast would lose both of their games against Essendon and against Port Adelaide. And I doubt both of those will happen. Maybe one of them might happen. I expect that the Port Adelaide could possibly turn on a big performance for Kenny Hinckley's last game as head coach for Port Adelaide. But again, in saying that, they also had the showdown a few weeks ago, and I thought that they might have showed up for the showdown, and they did for the first quarter, and then got absolutely buried pretty much after that. So who knows when it comes to Port Adelaide, realistically, and who knows with the Suns at the moment. But yeah, the Suns obviously got a shot at the top four. The Giants are in and around that mix as well, but obviously got to win pretty heavily against the Saints to even make a case for the top four, because they'd have to hope that Hawthorn and Collingwood in front of them would have to lose, as well as obviously Freo and obviously Gold Coast to not win by a hell of a lot, because obviously they have a kind of a 5.5, 6 point percentage boost on the Giants. So yeah, so top four finish probably not going to happen for the Giants. I think the best case scenario possibly could be fifth or sixth. It could be around the position we're at the moment, which is sixth, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think that they host an elimination final if they do finish sixth. So not a bad case, but obviously 1 foot inside the final series for the Giants at the moment. Obviously, they play the Saints at home next week. Will not be going to that game. As far as I know, I will be in Sydney, around the area, to watch, I think, the Tigers game against the Cowboys. I think I'm still up for that at the present moment. So I don't know at this point if that is 100% the case still. But I know that if that is still the case, I will be around, obviously, for that in particular. But yeah, 35-point win for the Giants in the second leg of the Expansion Cup. Keep the Expansion Cup in our possession again for another year. And yeah, 1 foot in finals for the Big Sound, which, yeah, great result. And obviously have the Saints next week at home at NG Stadium for the last round of the regular home and away season. So before I get to the big result, obviously, in the Titans men's team, gonna just briefly talk about, obviously, the Australian Cup for the Western Sydney Wanderers. It's pretty embarrassing loss. 3-0 loss against Heidelberg United in the round of 16. So that means that our Australian Cup competition is over now. They really only played 2 games in it, obviously, because they were in high position. They didn't have to play any playoff games or anything like that, and I think they took them lightly. I think the Wanderers took it lightly and thinking that they were going to do this easy, and they didn't. They got shown up, and Heidelberg are a decent team. They've done a cup upset or cup set, as the Australian Cup social media team usually says, a cup set, like Australian Cup upset, which obviously was like an NPL team, or like a team that is not in the lower and like in the highest league in Australia, which obviously is the A League in terms of football. obviously the NPL and like the competitions around that in the other states are around the second tier, which obviously is not like the Australian Championship, which I guess is supposed to be the second tier, and then obviously NPL and then that are the third tier. It's an interesting situation with obviously Football Australia and that whole competition. I don't know how that Australian Championship or whatever it's called works out as a second tier or anything like that, because there's no promotion, there's no relegation. So I don't understand in terms of the competition and what's going on with that, and whether it's still going. I don't know whether it's an idea that is still happening for Football Australia at the moment. But yeah, in saying that, obviously Heidelberg have done it a few times in the Australian Cup. They've been in the Australian Cup quite a few times. Obviously they've been a really, really good team for a long time, and they've upset a few A-League sides before as well. And obviously the Wanderers is another name added to that list. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, the Melbourne Victory is probably one of those upsets, I think, or Central Coast or something like that. It'd be either that or Sydney FC or something of that nature. But yeah, we can add the Wanderers to that list. 3-0 down to the Wanderers against Heidelberg United, and it was pretty embarrassing. And yeah, like I said, I think that they took them lightly. They thought they were going to probably cruise in, maybe 1-0, 2-1, 3-2 type of situation where they'll win by 1 goal easy or something like that. And they got shown up, and rightfully so. And I don't know what is going to happen with this Wanderers team, because there's a few good players that obviously left at the end of last season. There's a few that weren't as good. Obviously, we're firing towards the end of the season for the team and the club at the end of last season, and then obviously leading to the finals. For the Wanderers, that obviously some of those players weren't playing well towards the start and even the middle of the season as well, and kind of were hampering the club in a lot of fashions and a lot of areas. But yeah, I don't know what is happening with this team at the moment, and I don't know whether their preseason has been good or whether it's been shit or what's going on. But obviously the A-League season doesn't start for another couple of months. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting situation with obviously the A-League season coming up closer and closer every single week. So we'll see what happens with the Wanderers. But yeah, 3-0 loss, not an ideal situation for them in the Australian Cup. So yeah, they bow out at the round of 16 in the Australian Cup against Heidelberg United. Alright, I tried to strive away from this game and try to completely go in all other directions and not look at this game. But we do have to talk about the Titans men's team. And it was an absolute drubbing at Shark Park. Obviously, the Sharks have been dominant against the Titans at Shark Park, and it was a 32-point loss. Yes, that's right, 32-point loss to the Titans from the Sharks. 54 points to 22. And yeah, the defense gave up. I will say that. I think the defense just gave up. They just rolled on their bellies, very much like Port Adelaide have quite a few times this year in the AFL. Once a team has gotten a decent lead, or at least, a few goals or a few major scores in front, they've just sat down, laid down, rolled over, and left their chest wide open and just said, yep, we'll just take it. We'll take the shots. So it's not good enough. Not fucking good enough. It's an absolute embarrassment for this club. Obviously, yes, they scored 2 tries very late in the game yesterday to make it a little bit more respectable. Obviously, Josh Paxton scoring another try. Don't think it's his debut try, but it was another try for him, if not his first try in the NRL. Pretty sure he's got one before. Off the top of my head. And obviously Sammy scored as well, but that was in the last 10 minutes, the 71st minute and the 75th minute. So it was 54 points to 10 before that. but they had a slew of tries, one after the other, in a space of about 15, 20 minutes. They scored right before halftime, which didn't help. Obviously, made it 28 points to 10. And yeah, they just rolled at the 50th minute, the 54th minute, and the 59th minute, and the 63rd minute, and 65th. So they scored 5 tries in the space of about 20 minutes. Or like 15, 20 minutes. The Sharks, and obviously, yes, the Sharks are a top 8 side at the moment. Obviously, at the moment, the Sharks are in 7th in terms of points. And they've got the bye next week, I'm pretty sure. So they have a rest before the last couple of games of the season. So they'll have 32 points next week, which, yes, almost puts them in a situation that if the Panthers do lose to the Raiders next week, they will jump into 5th position, if not even 4th position, with obviously the for and against not being great for the Warriors. But obviously the Warriors have got to play us next week at the Gold Coast. But it's nowhere near good enough for this team. I swear that every time we have like a few steps forward, we take about 20 steps back this season. And I don't know what the hell has happened. I know Tino was back obviously this week, but that's no excuse for everybody else to just fucking just let go of the wheel, like let go of the steering wheel, and just be like, oh yeah, no, we'll put it on Tino's back. Especially when Tino went out and got injured and was concussed and has a category 2, ended up coming back into the game. But Jesus Christ, like I swear some of this team does not know the word effort. Like the word effort is not in their vocabulary. It's not in a dictionary that they've ever read before, whether they've even read a dictionary in their life before. But Jesus fucking Christ. Like, I know that obviously Newcastle has still got to play today against the Cowboys. But at the moment, like, our for and against is now the second worst again in the competition. And I mean, obviously it was really close to that. Obviously, the Rabbits ended up winning over the Eels as well, which puts everything in perspective of last week's loss in embarrassing fashion for the Titans, because ultimately the Rabbits won against the Eels anyway. So it didn't really matter whether they were going to win or lose. Like, their for and against now is, what, 4 points? 4 points between the Rabbits and the Titans in terms of the worst for and against in the season at the moment. Now, obviously, yes, the Cowboys have still got to play, and the Knights are still going to play. They're going to play today. They're going to play in the second game of the Sunday games today, in terms of, at the time of this recording. But the Cowboys have still got a bye, and so do the Rabbitohs. So at this point, Cowboys are on at least 21 points. The Rabbitohs are at least going to be at 22 points at season's end, if not more so for both teams. The Knights obviously have had all their byes. They're only 2 points in front of us, but they're for and against then have to lose by like 30 today to be anywhere close. Because they're at 152 in the minus, whereas we're now at 187 in the minus because of that stupid fucking loss. Like 32 fucking points. Like, that is nowhere near good enough. Like, we're at 155, I think it's the count. Yeah, 155. So we're only like 3 points behind Newcastle before this loss. I feel like, yes, Des might have lost the playing group, but it is a culture issue all throughout this club, and I don't know what the hell's going on, because ultimately you've got Kieran Foran retiring at the end of this season. You know, we got Keanu Kinney back this week, and he played alright this game. You know, we just got Tino back from being injured from an MCL, and thankfully it was only a light one, so he was only out for a few weeks. But he comes back and he gets concussed, and did come back into the game, but he was back this week. And then there's players that didn't even fucking bother, it looked like. It just, I don't know what the fuck is going on with this team. And I understand, like I said, the Sharks are fighting for a top 8 spot. Obviously, at this point, they're playing finals. They were playing finals pretty much before this game even started, I think, and they've obviously almost cemented their time in the top 8 at this point. Obviously, yes, they're still in 7th position, I think, at the moment, like I just said. Yeah, they're still in 7th. Obviously, like I said, got the bye, and then obviously got some games up. They got 2 games left after this, but what the hell is going on with this team? In fact, actually, yeah, they got 2 more games after this, so because they got to play 24 because it's 27 rounds in the season. So yeah, so the Sharks have still got 2 games left to go. They're in 7th position, so obviously they could have a situation where they could fall out, but they're at 30 points at the moment, and the Seagulls have still got to play a game today. Yeah, the Eagles have still got to play the Tigers this week. They're going to play the Tigers today, I think. But they're on the Eagles are on 24 points. The Dragons are on 22 in 11th, as well as the West Tigers. The Dolphins are in 9th at 26, and then the Roosters obviously are in the 8 now, obviously in front of the Dolphins, obviously winning over the Dolphins last week, but obviously the Dolphins losing to Brisbane last night as well kind of helps. That kind of helps the Roosters as well, because the Roosters are on 28 points, and then the Sharks and the Broncos are on 30 points at the moment. So the Sharks could still fall out of the top 8. So they need to win more games than they lose at this point to confirm themselves as finals contenders. But I swear, half the people did not fucking play. Like, they didn't play. Like, Simpkins didn't play, but I think he was the reserve. But you're looking at Keanu Kinney got 17 minutes. You know, he played reasonably well in his game back. Bo was on there for the full 80. Chris Randall was. There's a few players, obviously, that were playing the full 80 minutes. You know, Mo was back. He played 57. Yeah, there's a few forwards that have been there playing relatively well. And I don't know whether the effort is there from this team. And basically, at this point, just give us the fucking wooden spoon, because I don't know what the fuck we're playing for. We're not even playing for the coach, because I could see that. We're definitely not playing for the coach, and we're not playing for the fans either. Not playing for the fans like myself, or like a lot of the diehards as well. Like, we can't play like this. We shouldn't be playing like this. If we're playing for the fans, we should not be playing like this. And I don't know what needs to happen at the end of the season and during the off season. Probably going to get rid of Dez, which is most likely what's going to happen. And you know, that throws a whole wrench if they were going after Craig Bellamy and that rumour was true. And obviously, most teams would be going after Craig Bellamy. Why wouldn't you? I know I'm flubbing some of my words, but I'm very frustrated. And I'm very angry, and you can understand why I'm flubbing some of these words. But if the rumour is true that obviously the Titans were going after Craig Bellamy as coach, why the hell would you get rid of Dez, obviously, who, yes, is not having a great time on the Titans, in the Titans team, as a head coach? That's fair enough, all right? You can say that as an assessment. And in fact, thought he would do a hell of a lot better as coach for the Titans. He just hasn't done it, and I don't know whether it's his coaching, whether it's the team. I know that obviously, yes, mostly it's a culture issue. That's definitely the thing that I've said since even like pretty much all of this season, and even talking about last season, a couple of seasons ago. Like, on paper, this team should be right up there, near the top 8. At this point, and it's at the bottom, and they're at the bottom of the ladder, and with no hope in sight, basically. So if they get rid of Dez this year, at the end of this year, and start someone next year, if you're going for Craig Bellamy, he's not going to be available until 2027. So would you have a coach on for a year and then go for Craig? Like, is Craig going to go to, you know, even PNG, for example, because PNG is still going to go in the competition. They're obviously a few years away at this point. Obviously, the Bears, the Perth Bears, will be in 2027 season. So they won't be in next season, they'll be in the season after. But they've already got a coach. They've already got Mal Meninga, so that's not in the situation unless Craig, wants to be like an assistant head coach or something like that for Perth, or even a head coach for PNG. Whether he stays at the Storm or not. Like, the fact that he stayed at the Storm for the 2026 season kind of threw a wrench at everything that the Titans were going for if they're going after Craig Bellamy, and that rumour is true. But at this point, I don't know what you do in the coaching position, because ultimately, if you're going after Craig Bellamy, you can't have a coach be on for a year and then, sign on Craig Bellamy. That doesn't make any sense. But if you sign on another coach, you can't get Craig Bellamy in the process as well. So it's one of those situations where, do you keep Des for a year and then go for Craig Bellamy and push like all the money in the world to get him to head coach this team and turn everything around? Do you do that? Do you get rid of Des before his contract is over? I think it's supposed to be over at the end of next season. Do you get rid of Des and put someone in for a year and then go after Craig Bellamy, or have Craig Bellamy in the wings after like another year or so, like say 2028? Can fans wait that long? Can you expect fans to wait that long for success to happen, for really good success? And even then, even if Craig comes in, with the systems being broken, they might not necessarily be in a successful position with him at helm in the first season anyway. So you're making the fans wait even longer for more success, which is another issue. Or do you put another coach in, say like a Josh Hannay or like the Walker brothers or what have you, whoever is available, obviously, that wants to coach for the Titans? Do you put someone in that position and then try and build a team around them, but then obviously have a situation where, obviously they're not Craig Bellamy, and if the whole system is broken, do we go through the cycle of going through 2 or 3 years of another coach and then get rid of them and then saying that the coach is the issue? Because yes, okay, some of the blame could be on Des, right? Ultimately, our defense has not been up to snuff since basically he was there. And ultimately that has been obviously a situation that has happened with him. But again, if you extrapolate that even further to before Des, the defense has been an issue for the entire situation, even in the season that we actually made finals, in 2021 under Justin Holbrook. Like, our defense was good. I wouldn't say it was great that season, but obviously scraping in to make 8th that particular season definitely helped things. But obviously the defense was good enough to be in the top 8 and fight for it for quite a few games in that 2021 season. But the defense has been an issue for a long time. So it hasn't been just Des being an issue with the defense, because the defense has been an issue for almost a decade at this point. Since Neil Henry left, the defense has been an issue, with obviously the Neil Henry, Jen Haynes situation, which obviously with that, and obviously the Daly Cherry Evans situation as well happening around about the same time. Basically we kind of shot us. The board shot themselves in the foot with that decision, because obviously with Neil Henry, we were actually turning things around. It seemed at this point, we didn't see it really during the years that obviously we were in, but we weren't like far away from finals. I think we were in 9th, 10th, right down to 12th, 13th maybe, with not too many wins behind the teams that are in the top 8, obviously in those seasons. But yeah, it's just, I don't know what this team is going to do. Obviously they're shaking up with the terms of new ownership, with obviously Frizzell's getting major ownership on the team now. The football department obviously changing, with obviously a new person in charge in terms of the football department. In terms of recruitment, obviously there's going to be a new person in that position, but I don't know what happens, because ultimately we could upheave this team entirely, but I don't know what's going to happen with this team. So ultimately these next 3 games are going to be important for the future of this team. Obviously we've got the Warriors at home on the middle game of the Saturday games, obviously after the women's game. which is obviously the second game of the women's competition. Obviously, they're playing at 3:15 against the Dragons, so obviously double header there. So ended up that the Titans will play at 5:30, so they'll be playing the second game of the double header against the Warriors at home. Then it's at Suncorp against the Dolphins in round 26 on the Sunday, and then back home in the Gold Coast against the Tigers for the last round on the middle game of the Saturday of the first weekend in September. So, yeah, it would be interesting to see where this team goes, but at this point, it's not going up. It's probably going to stay in 17th, and for the first time in a long time, the Titans will have a wooden spoon, because I don't think they've only had last maybe once or twice in their history in terms of the Titans, like the Titans branding, but this season has been very disappointing to say the least. And I'm sorry for going on a rant, but this team, like, I am very passionate. You can tell that I am very passionate about this team. And there's a lot of things that are going for this team. There's a lot of things that could go against this team. But it's just some of the things that they do, I swear, don't make any ounce of sense. And the fans are paying for it, basically, at this point. 5 wins in a competition that has 27 rounds and we're played 24. It's nowhere near good enough. Not good enough at all. Nowhere near enough. It's a disgrace, and I'm sick of it. I did put them last on purpose, just to let out a lot of, obviously, feelings and frustration. So yeah, just need a big sigh. Obviously, there's been some good times this week in terms of Liverpool and in terms of the Giants, obviously being one step closer to finals. And even the Titans women, despite them losing, they gave it a good shake. Obviously, errors costed them, and even errors costed them in the men's game as well. But there was more than just errors that let them down in that particular game. But that'll be it for this episode of How's My Team. Obviously, we had talk about Liverpool, we talked about the Wanderers, we talked about both Titans teams, we've talked about the Giants. I even got to talk about the Giants women's team, which I completely forgot. They lost as well. They didn't lose. They lost by a decent amount, I will say. I completely forgot that they actually played last night. They played after the Giants played. Hold on, let me find the... So they're in 11th at the moment. Obviously, there's still a few teams to play, but they lost by a decent chunk. Their percentage is not great. It's 34.1, but obviously the Western Bulldogs lost by a lot more, so the Western Bulldogs will probably be at the bottom of the AFLW's standings towards the end, possibly. But it was 85 points to 29 for the Giants women's team. So yeah, 13 goals 7 for Essendon Bombers to 3 goals 11. So yeah, they lost by 56. So not a great result for them either. But obviously with the Giants women's team, it's very difficult for them because they have not been playing great football the last few seasons. But there's a lot of younger girls playing at the Giants, so not necessarily the best case scenario, but it's not the worst situation for them. But yeah, and I'm not expecting a finals run from this team in terms of the women's team, because they still need to work out a lot of combinations and stuff like that. But yeah, so I've had some good situations, obviously some bad situations, obviously with the Titans men's team, and I don't really want to talk about that anymore. Just kind of want to move on and just take the punches as I go, because they're probably going to be last at the end of the season anyway. So might as well just let it happen and see where the team goes and go week to week with it. But yeah, a little bit annoyed by that, but obviously kind of dampened my Saturday with obviously the Giants getting up. obviously kind of down, obviously because of the women's Titans team, but obviously up for the Giants men's team. But yeah, so we won't be talking about Liverpool next week. Obviously, we'll be talking about them the week after, with how things are going at the moment. Obviously, with the game not playing until the Tuesday next week for Liverpool, and then obviously we'll talk about obviously the Giants, both Giants teams, and we'll talk about both Titans teams next week. And then obviously, yes, the Wanderers are still in pre-season, so got a lot to talk about. But yeah, it's just one of those weeks for especially the Titans men's team. But with all that said, thank you guys so much for watching this episode of How's My Team. Again, apologise for the big rant on the Titans and obviously the rant in the middle of this outro. But what can you do? When you're passionate about a team, sometimes you're going to rant about things when they don't go your way. So with all that said, thank you guys so much for watching this episode of How's My Team. This has been Mario Man 10,100. And there we go, there's another flub. This is Mario Man 10,100. You guys have a great day and night. And of course, take care.